I'm 82 years old, and I'm going to tell you something that your parents and your teachers were too afraid to say out loud. Karma is a lie. It's a fairy tale told to victims so they stay quiet while the monsters finish their dinner. You've been told that everything happens for a reason and that the universe will settle the score. That is cowardice disguised as wisdom. If you're sitting there waiting for a boomerang to hit the person who hurt you, you aren't being the bigger person. You're just a spectator in your own life while the villain walks away with the prize. I spent 30 years as a criminal investigator. I've looked into the eyes of men who destroyed thousands of lives and then went home to sleep like babies in silk sheets. And I can tell you, the universe doesn't have a scale. Justice isn't something that happens. It's something you have to hunt down, trap, and force into existence with your own two hands. My name is Dennis. I live in the States now, an immigrant who left everything behind. But my soul is still back in those gray offices of the Russian investigative committees. I've seen how the world actually works when the cameras are off. I didn't leave because I wanted a better life. I left because I was tired of being the only one trying to hold back the tide in a country where the law is just a suggestion for the poor and a shield for the rich. If you want to know how the world really works, don't ask a philosopher. Ask a man who has seen what people do when they know no one is coming to stop them. Back in the mid-90s, in a region where the pine forests were being eaten alive by greed, I saw what fate really looks like. There was a hill overlooking a small village. A timber mogul, let's call him Volkov, decided that the ancient trees on that hill were worth more than the safety of the people below. He stripped that hill bare, ignoring every warning that the soil would liquefy. When the rains came, the hill didn't just slide, it exploded. The most inconvenient thing about that night wasn't the destroyed houses. It was a 7-year-old boy named Alyosha. He didn't even live there. He had just come from the city to spend the week with his grandmother. He was sleeping in the back room when the mud swallowed the house. He was the only child who died that night. And when a child dies because of greed, it creates a kind of noise that even corrupt politicians find hard to ignore. The system didn't want justice for Alyosha. They wanted silence. I remember Maria, the mother. She looked like a ghost when she walked into my office. They had already offered her $40,000. You have to understand Russia in the 90s. It was a brutal, merciless place where the floor had fallen out from under everyone. Poverty wasn't just a lack of money. It was a cage that crushed your bones. Maria looked at me and asked, "Will God punish them, Dennis?" I wanted to lie to her. I wanted to tell her that a lightning bolt would strike Volkov's office. But I knew Volkov was currently dining with the governor. So I told her the truth. Maria, if you sign that paper, the only person who will ever remember Alyosha is you. But if you sign it, your other children might actually survive this decade. Please do not judge her. In that moment, she wasn't selling her son. She was choosing the only thing she could actually change. That blood money pulled her family out of the dirt. It paid for her children's education and bought them their first apartments, places where they could sleep without the fear of the walls closing in. She knew she would never get justice in a courtroom, so she forced Alyosha's ghost to save his siblings instead. But I didn't let it go. I didn't wait for karma. I waited for a crack in Volkov's armor. Years later, when Volkov fell out of favor with the new political elite, when he became a liability instead of an asset, I was ready. I hadn't forgotten that file. I didn't rely on fate. I spent years quietly collecting every thread, every illegal kickback, every corner he cut. When his friends turned their backs, I handed the prosecutor the rope. He didn't go to prison for the landslide. He went for embezzlement. But as he was being led away in handcuffs, I made sure he saw me in the courtroom. That wasn't the universe balancing the scales. That was a man who wouldn't let a story go. By the early 2000s, Russia was a different beast, but the stench of greed was the same. In a town not far from where I worked, a massive illegal landfill started growing like a cancer. It was leaching chemicals into the groundwater. We knew who was behind it, a company tied to the regional administration. My superiors told me to stay in my lane. They said the people would get used to the smell. But justice isn't just about police work. It's about being so loud and so inconvenient that it becomes cheaper for the bad guys to do the right thing than to keep lying. I couldn't open an official case, so I became a source. I met with a group of local activists, tired parents, and a few brave journalists in the back of a dim cafe. I showed them how the company was faking their waste manifests. I told them, don't wait for a hero. Be the nightmare. Every time a truck enters that landfill, film it. Every time a child gets a rash, document it. Make it impossible for them to hide. For 6 months, they were relentless. They didn't pray for the landfill to vanish. They made it a political radioactive zone. They filed petitions. They blocked roads. They sent evidence to Moscow. Eventually, the regional boss had to sacrifice someone to save his own skin. The landfill was closed. A mid-level official went to jail, and the company was forced to pay a massive fine to the city. Was it perfect? No. But it proved one thing. The world only becomes fair when you refuse to let the ubludki, bastards, sleep in peace. I see it even here in America. You hear names whispered in the news, names on lists like Epstein's, names of people who have done terrible things and are still walking free. And I hear people say, well, their day will come. No, it won't. Their day will only come if someone is brave enough to drag them into the light. The older I get, the more I realize that civilization is just a thin layer of paint. Underneath, it's still the same fight. If you let people get away with the small things, the bad food in your schools, the park being sold to a developer, the boss who steals your overtime, you are training them to take the big things later. My regret? I've spent too much time being a good investigator who followed the rules, and not enough time being a man who broke the rules to get the truth. I thought the system would reward my honesty. It didn't. It only feared my persistence. So, I'm looking at you through this screen, and I have to ask, how long are you going to keep swallowing that poison? How many times are you going to watch someone hurt you or your family and say, it's okay, the universe will handle it? If you knew, and I mean really knew, that no higher power was coming to save you, what would you do differently today? If you knew that the only way to stop that person from doing it again was for you to speak up, would you still stay silent? You need to understand that the perfect time to stand up is a myth. In the next 24 hours, I want you to do something that makes the bad guys in your life uncomfortable. Don't just think about it. Take an action. Stop telling yourself what goes around comes around, and start making it come around. If someone is crossing your boundaries, write that email today. If there is an injustice in your neighborhood, find the person who is fighting it and ask how you can help. Give them your time, your voice, or your documentation. Document every single thing, because when the time comes to pull the rope, you're going to need the evidence, not just your prayers. Justice is a job. It's a dirty, exhausting 24-hour shift, and it's your turn to clock in. I'm 82. I've seen the worst of humanity, but I've also seen what happens when the little people decide they've had enough. Don't wait until you're sitting in a chair like mine, looking back at all the times you should have fought and didn't. If this message hits you where it hurts, then good. It means you're still alive enough to care. Subscribe to this channel if you're tired of the lies. Tell me in the comments, what is the one injustice you've been ignoring? And what are you going to do about it tonight? And if you have a story, if you've seen the truth for yourself, there is a link in the description. Fill it out. We need to tell the world what happens when we stop waiting for karma and start creating justice. The clock is ticking. Stop waiting for a miracle. Go be one.